Have you ever wondered what lies behind the quiet flow of a river or the rustling of waves on the shore? These sounds are not just the noise of nature, they may be the key to ancient legends and unattainable knowledge that has been passed down from generation to generation. There was no one on the shore but a girl. Young, almost a child, she stood at the water's edge, as if listening to something. She gazed into the dark water of the lake and whispered something quickly. Suddenly, the water surface, calm up to that moment, began to ripple. The waves became bigger and bigger, splashing onto the shore, burning the girl's bare feet with icy water. The water bubbled as if in a boiling kettle. In the sky, the clouds were thickening, as if someone was pulling them down to one place, over the lake. A few minutes later, a downpour broke out. The girl turned and quietly walked home without turning around. She had done her job. That same evening, the body of a drowned man who had been searched for 2 weeks washed ashore. Masha was afraid of the water, not just afraid of swimming in the lake or sea, but afraid of plain water, even in a glass. From the outside, her behavior seemed at least strange. The girl could take a long look and smell the water in the glass before taking a sip. Water was a deadly danger, and the girl was afraid for good reason. When she was a baby, a wee one about 4 years old, there was an accident. They were on vacation at the local lake when little Masha suddenly began to drown in her inflatable lap. The girl screamed in fear, but she was not heard. The roar of the tape recorder drowned out all the cries of the child. Masha went underwater with her head, and there, in the dark depths of the lake, something happened to her. She was rescued by an unfamiliar guy who was vacationing with his family nearby. From the shock, she did not remember anything for many years. Remained only fear of any water. By the way, Masha also got a hit from her parents for what happened, and they had to explain themselves to the police. Years passed. Maria's fear did not go away. It became a torture for her to take a shower, to do basic things. Her behavior became strange, and eventually she ended up at the doctor's office. The girl was prescribed medication, and it really became easier. At the sessions, Masha almost did not speak. She was just afraid to tell the truth. She was lucky to have a doctor. An older woman with vast experience saw that with a young patient, it was not all so simple. It wasn't just a fear that had turned into a phobia. The girl was really afraid. Irina Semyonovna, Masha's doctor, was an experienced woman who had seen a lot in her life, and sometimes received very unexpected answers to questions. So far, Irina just watched the girl. "Masha, tell me, how do you feel?" Somehow the doctor started the conversation. "I can hear her." "You can hear her?" "Yes, she talks to me. Sometimes I hear crying. I'm very afraid of it." "Did it start after that incident at the lake?" The girl nodded and did not answer any more questions. In other matters, Masha grew up a normal child, just like everyone else. Well, maybe not exactly like everyone else. The girl spent most of her time with her grandmother, as her mother had a new daughter, and Masha had no place there. At her parents', she was not planned. An early and not very welcome child. Masha grew up with her grandmother, who tried to help her granddaughter overcome her fear of water. So she lived with her grandmother until she was 20. Grandma left suddenly, just did not wake up. The girl was very worried about the loss, and the fact that her mother did not come to the funeral but showed up to divide the inheritance. "I am her daughter, and the apartment should be mine." "My daughter is almost a bride," said her mother, dumbfounded Masha. "And I am not your daughter?" clarified the girl. "Well, you are you. You just are. You understand everything. So when do we go to the notary?" "Never. And now, woman, leave the apartment, my apartment, before I call the police," Maria said. An ugly scandal with a fight broke out, after which Masha's mother left and for many years disappeared from the sight of her eldest daughter. Masha began to live alone, working as an ordinary manager and still afraid of water. She took pills and carefully hid her secret. One day, Maria and her friends went to a recreation center. Her friend promised pine forest, silence, and beauty. As soon as they entered the territory of the base, Panic struck the girl. There was water everywhere. A small pond with lilies at the entrance, a couple of beautiful fountains, and a large lake spread out right in front of them. Everyone was enthralled, and Masha felt her fingers freezing and cold sweat trickling down her back. Her worst nightmare was coming true. "Don't bite, Masha. We'll have a great vacation." Masha automatically nodded, keeping her eyes on the lake. On the one hand, she was terribly afraid of this dark mass of water, and on the other hand, it beckoned her. The craving for the water and her fear almost matched in strength, and the girl had almost no strength left to fight. In the evening, their company gathered in the gazebo on the lake. Masha also went. She had no choice. She could not sit in the room for 3 days. She even liked it. They grilled kebabs, sang to the guitar, and from the fire there was a pleasant warmth, chasing away the lake cold. Around midnight, they started to disperse. Suddenly Maria heard a short scream, someone calling for help. She took a step, another. She didn't want to go to the water, but it was as if some force was pulling her. The girl woke up and wanted to call for someone, but immediately realized that she was alone on the shore. The fire was almost burned out. It was dark and not cozy. How much time had passed? Maria found herself knee-deep in water. The lake water was icy, licking her feet. It hurt her, but she couldn't scream. Her voice was gone. She only watched silently as the dark shroud of water was about to cover her head. The water covered Maria with a dark blanket, dragging her down into the void. She felt air bubbles bursting out of her body, rushing towards the surface. And then she sees it. The water seems to glow, getting lighter, long hair like algae rippling in the water. A face as pale as marble, eyes closed. A long sundress wrapped around her body like a shroud. She is a dead lake dweller, a drowned woman. The body, contrary to the laws of nature, does not float face downward, as is the case in drowning. The deceased stands, swaying slightly on the waves. That makes it even scarier. Suddenly, Masha finds herself very close to the face of the deceased, almost touching her. It seemed to the girl that the eyelashes trembled. So it is. One more second and she will open her eyes. Masha recoiled in horror, but the water became a kind of muddle. It was difficult to even move. The deceased opened her eyes and looked directly at Maria. The girl choked on a scream. "Masha! Masha!" Someone slapped her cheeks while pulling her out of the water. "Why did you go into the lake?" Maria looked confusedly at her friend's face. Only now she realized that she was standing almost hip-deep in water. Her hair was wet, as if she had been diving, and there were streams of water running down her face. "I didn't mean to," Maria mumbled. They returned to the room. The girl changed her clothes and wrapped herself in a blanket. These visions scared the hell out of her. "Tell me what's going on with you." "I can see that you are afraid of water, but you went into the lake," asked her friend. By the way, Nika was Masha's only friend from school, and even to her, she didn't reveal her secret. So Maria told her. Probably, for the first time in her life, she let out all her worries and emotions and felt better. She told about the incident at the lake in her childhood, about the doctor, the treatment, and her fear. Nika listened attentively, silently, wondering in her heart how Maria had been carrying such a burden for so many years. "You know, I once read about people like you." Nika paused. "After an accident, they manifest superpowers. Somebody can see the past or the future or something. Maybe you're like a witch now. It's weird and scary." "Yeah, believe me, it's the scariest. I can't tell you what I see and hear, but take my word for it, it's scary," Maria said. "I know who can help us." Nika suddenly cheered up. "Me? My doctor doesn't help me much," the girl grimaced. "I'm from these parts. I grew up in a village not far from here. And Katya lives in our old farm and she's a witch." Maria couldn't help but laugh. "A witch? What kind of witch is she? Although she's already agreed to any help, can she help?" "I don't know, but you could ask. Maybe she can tell you something. Aunt Katya saved me from death when I was a kid. I had a fever for a week. It was a cold and snowy winter. They couldn't take me to the hospital. That's what my mom told me later. The temperature was high, did not fall, unconscious almost all the time, convulsions. Just a couple more days and you could order a coffin. And Aunt Katya came herself, pushed my parents out, stove was heated again, whispered something, brewed herbs. Then in the bath I was steamed with some odoriferous herbs. In short, she put me on my feet in 3 days. So I feel like I'm her family, Nika told me. Okay, agreed Masha, and she will not kick us out? No. The next morning, having rented bicycles, the girls set off. Nika knew the area well, so after a couple of hours of riding along beautiful paths, the girls arrived at the farm. The farm was bustling with life. A few people were sitting on the bench in front of the gate, waiting for the reception. There was a flock of geese, a dog barked, and a big black cat with green eyes was sitting on the fence. As soon as the girls saw him, the cat jumped down from the fence and hid in the house. "Oh, Nikusia, hello!" Aunt Katya came out to them, hugged the girl, and looked at Masha attentively. "You wait a couple of hours, now I'll receive people and then we'll talk." Masha wanted to object, but the owner of the farmhouse gave her such a look that she silently sat down on the bench. The house itself looked impressive with lots of flowers and greenery everywhere, and a large garden behind the house. Veronica told her about it. "It's a gift, or it could be a curse. It depends." The woman, leaning on her cane, slowly descended the steps to the garden. "This garden was once laid out by my husband. He also built the gazebo and the fish pond, but there are no fish, only dark water, and you can hear it." Masha followed the old woman, listening attentively. They walked along the neat paths of the garden and stopped at a small pond with dark, almost black water. "What do you hear?" "Don't be afraid." The woman stroked the girl's hand affectionately. The girl stared at the water and for the first time stood in front of the water without fear. For some reason she felt very calm with this woman. In the first moments Masha heard nothing, only the splash of water, and after a couple of minutes she heard a child's cry. From the pinching sound her heart clenched. The child was desperately sobbing. "Maria!" The girl was pulled out of the flow of energy and information. She came to her senses. "Gift or curse? What is it? Have you ever heard of the theory that everything has a memory and so does water? Water is the main source of life on Earth. Without water there would be no planet, no man, nothing. Let's not even talk about it. A human being is made up of water. There's water in our cells. Water is amazing, its properties are amazing, but we're just used to it and don't notice it." In the 1980s, a French chemist studied water memory. It means that water remembers any substance that has ever been dissolved in it. The theory is controversial and its proof has been disputed for years. This theory, by the way, is widely used in homeopathy. But that's not what's important to us. There are various legends about water. Remember living in dead water. I'm not quite sure what this is about. If it is not proven that the memory of water exists, objected Masha. We are talking about the fact that in sorcery, water takes a huge place and not just for nothing. Water absorbs and remembers feelings, emotions, and it can tell its secrets to the witch. For example, a man who drowned in the river. He gave his last feelings and emotions to water. In the last moments of life, human emotions are especially strong. "Don't forget, strong emotions are energy," said Aunt Katya. They returned to the house and now sat by the burning fireplace. "What's it got to do with me? Why was I dragged into it?" Masha asked. "You're a good conductor. Water transmits information through you. You just need to learn to control this gift," said the lady of the house. "It's your destiny." Masha stayed with Aunt Katya, who began to teach the girl. Days flowed monotonously. Long walks in deserted places, meditation near the water. The woman relieved Masha of her fear in a very interesting way, in a bathhouse. They came to the heated bathhouse almost at midnight. In the light of a dim lamp, Masha saw large barrels of water. Fear instantly flooded her soul, and Zoya Pavlovna noticed it. The old woman performed a purification ritual, reading an incantation and pouring water on Masha. During the ritual, the girl clearly heard whispers and laughter that gave her goosebumps all over her body. "Now you are ready," Katerina said the next morning to her ward. They arrived at the riverbank where the boy had recently gone missing. Divers had scoured the bottom twice and found nothing. Maria listened to her senses, and then she heard it, mumbling, crying, pleading for help. The boy was there, only no one could see him. The girl closed her eyes and concentrated on the water surface. Mentally, she created the water of this river, saw from the molecule to the turbulent stream at the head of the mountains. Her consciousness glided along the water surface, listening, looking into the water column. Suddenly, she felt the water enveloping her like a cocoon, pulling her down. Her legs were entangled with invisible icy ropes. Her chest was squeezed and pressed harder. Opening her eyes, she saw only impenetrable darkness. She was now in the mind of the drowned man, in his last moments. Her feet touched the sandy bottom. Her fingers felt the grains of sand. No more strength to resist. He opens his eyes, his lungs burning and no longer able to hold out. A second and river water rushed down his throat. That's all. After a while, the body was carried a little farther by the current and covered with seaweed like a soft blanket. That's why the divers didn't find it. The river doesn't want to give up its victim so easily. The girl took a deep breath, as if before diving into the water, and mentally dived. Minutes passed. Masha stood in a deep trance. Drops of sweat appeared on her forehead. Suddenly she breathed heavily, coughed, fell to the ground, and froze. And a few moments later she coughed. Water poured out of her throat. Masha was helped to sit up and she coughed. It tasted like river water in my mouth. Masha wrinkled her nose at the unpleasant sensation. Did you see him? Yes, wait a bit. I called him. The river will give up the body. Another long 10 minutes passed. The sun disappeared behind the horizon. In the eerie silence and twilight, the water suddenly boiled. The river bubbled like a kettle on a stove, and a few minutes later, the unnaturally long body of a young man emerged from the depths. Well, at least they'll give him a proper burial, said Maria's mentor. A few years passed, and now, Maria stands on the shore of the lake, about which there are different rumors. She had long ago learned to control the gift, to listen to herself and not be afraid. Her former doctor believed in Maria's gift immediately, and subsequently helped in many ways. In some ways, the attending physician became a close person for her. Aunt Katya looked after Masha all these years, helping and mentoring her. A gift or a curse? Masha could not answer this question. All she knew was that it helps. And the living dead need peace, and she helps them find that peace. Now standing on the shore of the lake, memories flit by like a startled bird. It's time to get started. The day before, a girl had gone missing, presumed drowned. Maria walked to the water and closed her eyes. A light wind fluttered her long hair, the lake surface motionless. Clouds were gathering over the lake. It was time.